and left me a Yashica 635 and a Retina 2A. And so they were all jammed up and everything, just they didn't work at all. And so there's a camera place not too far where they repair it. So they completely restored it and everything, and went to a little camera store called Dunwoody Photo, and knew nothing about film photography. And I said, hey, I got this, little Yashica. I don't even know anything. I just want to buy a roll of film and see if this thing works. And so they handed me a roll. I think it was Provia, I think it was Provia 100, and took it. And I didn't even really know how to meter film or anything along those lines. So I just figured, okay, I'll just set my camera to my Nikon to like 100, and then just take a couple exposures, digitally get an idea, and then say, okay, that looks right, and then just kind of shot some pictures with it based off what the digital camera told me. And I took it in, and a few days later I came back, and they showed me the slides, and I was hooked. And I was just completely mind blown that a camera from like 1959 just looked so good. And so I was like, I got to know more about this, and then it just kind of, I loitered, I guess is probably the better word, at the lab. And, there were many days where I was late from lunch, and like my boss was like getting super ticked about how late I was. And like, I was showing up like 3-4 times a week, to the lab just to understand and, just kind of, get an idea of all this. And so it just was soaking it up like a sponge. And then it just kind of, one day, it was just Stephen, who was helping out at the lab, and Michael, the owner of Dunwoody Photo, said, I got this crazy idea. Let's go to dinner and let's talk about, maybe starting a podcast up or something. And so we went to dinner, and dinner was like 3 hours long, and just talking about everything film photography related. And
but what did you guys have? What did you have for dinner though?
I had a burger and some beers, so many beers. But by the end of it, I kind of already knew we could do this. And so the original intent around it was that it would just be, because we have kind of like the Atlanta Film Photographers Facebook group. So it was just kind of like a thing that, was originally intended for Atlanta. And then we had KH Camera. We had some friends that worked there, and we said, hey, it would be cool to have KH Camera on. KH Camera came on. We did an interview, and we did actually like a three episode series, one on 35, one on medium format, one on large format, I think. And one of the guys knows Bellamy Hunt, and he's like, dude, I'll send Bellamy an email right now. We can get Japan Camera Hunter on the show. I was like, yeah, that'd be really cool and everything. And then it actually happened, and then that was kind of like the first time it kind of like blew up, and I was just like, this is way more than just Atlanta, right? And then that's when, they're like, KH was, I'll admit, they're like instrumental as far as like being able to connect us with people, because they're like, hey, we know the guys over at Cinestill Film. You want to interview them? I was like, let's do it, So we were not even 10 episodes in, and we were already like hitting these huge names that I never even, like, I felt stupid, interviewing the brothers at Cinestill Film, because I really didn't know the company all that much. And like, I called them the Wright brothers, it was just like, what am I doing here? These aren't guys making airplanes, and so it was like the brothers Wright at the time, so I just felt really, really dumb, and just was just so naive about everything. But I just kept going at it, and I realized that I was learning so much through all these conversations, and I think that was kind of the key for kind of its growth, was that it was kind of like my hunger to understand and learn. And that kind of was just always one of those things, that my genuine curiosity about the guests that came onto the show was always the number one thing. And, we talked about news and we, bantered about that and stuff like that. And, and it was kind of funny because there was a program model that I followed, and that was back. You remember Chrono's photo, the Raw Talk. That was kind of like the I follow that model, and because I knew I enjoyed the content on that show, and I was really disappointed when he pulled the plug on it.
Mm-hmm.
But like I was like, if that worked for him, it's got to work for us. And so if you kind of pay attention to how the show is laid out, it's laid out very similar to how he had that show. And so yeah, that was just kind of how it just kind of grew. And then, a couple of seasons in, Kodak was inviting us to go up to Rochester to interview them at the Kodakery, and like it was just an incredible 5 years of just incredible people that I'm eternally grateful for meeting and crossing paths with them.
That's awesome, man. I appreciate you sharing that story.
Yeah.
I do have to admit though, since this is the first time using the ATEM, I kind of fucked up. In the first 8 minutes of us talking, didn't end up on YouTube because I thought it was and I'm like, why does it keep saying preview? And
so you want me to do the whole thing over again?
No. I'm not gonna make it'll be on the podcast, because I record the audio off of the Roadcaster, and that goes into all the streaming thing, or into all of the podcast platforms. But I'm gonna do a late YouTube intro, so we gotta listen to that music again one more time. So
all good.
Yeah, so sorry everyone that you have to listen to the intro music a second time because I'm an idiot. But welcome to Photography Chat. We've got Bill Manning with us here, and it's been fun.
Photography Chat.
I think it's going to be even more fun. Someone says here, Bill's beard knows photos.
I'm like the opposite of Jared Bowen. I have no hair up here. It's all down here. So I'm like the opposite of his fro.
That just makes me think of Bo Knows, which is that ages me. If you know what that is, then you know that I'm old because you're also old too.
Yep. Awesome.
That is awesome. But dude, the Kodak factory, that place, right? Yeah. I got to see it in 2019, and I'm still.
Oh wow.
I'm still digesting that, just the scale that everything is there to make film is the idea of buildings as machines. Still, I haven't fully digested that yet because it was just so wild.
You certainly have an appreciation for the people that work there, right? Because I mean, the crazy fact that Matt Stoffel gave us, on those types of tours is at one point, the perf machines were going at full force that you could actually, at the time was the Richter scale, but you could actually see the needle moving on the Richter scale as far as those perf machines were running. And then I think at the peak of 2003, they made almost 1 billion rolls of film.
Oh man!
So you can imagine as we were, walking down those halls, 1 billion rolls coming out of that at that time. It's mind-boggling.
Well, and even just the sensitivity of things. Matt was telling us this story when we were at the coding facility, when we were standing next to the coder, and he was telling us how they had a VIP tour going on while it was in production. So they were coding. And they found out that the VIP visit ruined a whole batch of film because they were 20 feet away from the coder, but the vibrations from them having a conversation 20 feet away from the coder rippled the coding.
Whoa.
And it ruined a whole batch. They had to just throw it out. So it's now when it's running, no one's allowed anywhere near it. It's kind of wild.
Wow. Yeah, when we went, we were there when they were finishing, And so one of the big eye openers for us at that time was, and Steven came up with me on the tour, and they had the machine. You see the boxes coming down and moving throughout and all that stuff. And so I was like, "Oh, that's really cool. Well, where do you guys do 120?" And they were like, "Oh, well, we unplug this machine, we roll it out of the way, and then we roll this machine in, and that is, and then we plug that in, and then we do 120." I was like, "So hold on, time out. So this one machine is responsible for delivering film for the entire world?" And he was like, "Yeah, pretty much." I was like, "Oh my gosh," and that was probably about a year before when, all the price increases, when they said, "Hey, we're making investments on expanding production and all that." So like, that was like right before all that. Like literally it was like one machine that they were down to that made film for the entire world up to about 2018. It was just like mind-boggling, and they were just getting ready to announce Ektachrome too, or release Ektachrome.
That's wild. Sorry, I got distracted because Stanley is our one sole watcher in the YouTube stream, and apparently there's a delay on the YouTube stream, which doesn't surprise me. I think it's like 10 or 20 seconds or something. But what I apparently sound 1,000,000% more Canadian on YouTube than I do on here. So I don't know. I guess Instagram does some processing to the audio or something, because the YouTube feed is getting audio straight out of the Rodecaster and into the ATEM. But yeah, the factory was just, it was and the passion of the people there, I think, is what I left with the greatest feeling for. Was after meeting all those people and like hearing their stories and how, like, several of them were like several generations of Kodakers, I was like, I want to fucking work at the factory now. Like, I need to like dismantle my life in Canada so I can move to Rochester and like get a job at the factory.
Well, I mean, you're not far from Niagara, between Rochester. I think it's only about an hour or so, but yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, just speaking to the engineers, I mean, they're absolutely brilliant people, and I tip my hat to every single person that works there, because you can tell their dedication to the process, and I left there just so appreciative of what we have, right? So I know that we'll certainly get into me talking about the endeavor and some of the crazy things that I've said on the internet about prices and stuff like that. But I mean, like, at the end of the day, it's like you kind of understand. There's a bit of a level of understanding, and I think Destin from Smarter Every Day did a fantastic job covering that. I mean, literally, I have probably, the fact that he put all the footage up is just absolutely amazing. Like, I have footage, hours and hours of footage that I never released from the video that I did, because it was just like drinking water from a fire hose. It's like, I don't know how to like tell this other than, do I just put clips of everything and just like not make it, let it not make any sense, like I didn't know what to do with it. And I sat on that for a very long time, because I really struggled as far as how do I tell, the story of this visit. And it was incredibly difficult. I mean, that 10 minutes took me a year and a half, and granted, I mean, there were certainly other projects involved with that as well. But, it was difficult just sitting down going, I don't know how to do this.
But that's when you don't know how to do something, if you really want to take a crack at it, just sit down and try. Like,
yeah, I
didn't know how to do any of this stuff 3 years ago. I still have no idea what I'm doing, but yeah, it's been fun, like just kind of figuring it out. And I couldn't imagine how difficult that would have been to go through all of that footage and just pare it down to 10 minutes. Like, Jesus. Like, what? There's so much cool shit there.
It is. It really is. And it got to a point where, you know, I made so many friends in the motion picture industry and everything where I just reached out to some people. I'm like, hey, you have a non-biased view because, like, I think everything is important in this. So literally it got to a point, it's like, I will pay you to edit this, you know, and, like, just go through this footage and let's get me a first draft, a first cut at this thing. And then, like, you know, and then once I got that first cut, I was like, okay, I see where you're going with this. Let's have a conversation how we can improve, you know, the foundation to the story. And then at that point, then we were able to kind of move forward with it because at that point it was just like they took stuff from like the Eastman Museum and then it was like, oh my gosh, okay, now I see what you're doing. Okay, let's do this and do that. And then, you know, everything just kind of really fell into place at that point. So sometimes you just kind of have to say, I'm in too deep with it. And, you know, you just got to have to kind of separate yourself and, you know, kind of trust other people with it, you know?
Yeah, that's a great point because like when you're too close to it, it's really hard. So it's nice to just have a voice and an opinion from the outside to get you through that. Otherwise you end up in like, what is it? Analysis paralysis, where you're just like going over and over and trying to figure shit out. Big shout out to Matt at Kodak. I love that guy. He's like the fucking best. And also to Tim Ryugo. Awesome. Tim's the just greatest of all time. Like all the Kodak folks are so nice.
They are. Tim is definitely the GOAT. He a funny story. I'll tell you this one about Tim. So we interviewed Tim at a conference in the Imaging USA is the conference. It's kind of like, you know, the one of the big photography cons, and Kodak Polaris was there, and so I had reached out to him prior and said, hey, it'd be really cool to meet you and interview you. You know, could we set up some time to you know, interview you and all that? And he said, yeah, absolutely, let's do it. And so I, you know, this is at the time where I had all this crazy gear, you know, that 16 channel mic set up and everything along those lines. And so we got into the suite that Kodak had, or Kodak Polaris had leased or used for that space. And so we ended up converting that into a studio. And what ended up happening was I left the power plug to the unit at my hotel room because I did a quick check and everything was in there except for the power plug. And so we did everything, we set everything up, and like Tim came in and like I was like, oh my God, I can run back to the hotel, which is I wasn't at the same hotel that they were at. I would have had it driven 15 minutes down the road and another 15 minutes back and everything. And so like I just felt so incredibly dumb. And he was just like, hey, can we do this tomorrow? Because he had just finished a photo walk and like it was like 18 degrees outside, you know. And so like he, you know, I felt like I was like, oh my God, I felt so embarrassed. Like this was like my first shot at interviewing, you know, an incredible person, and I completely screwed it up. And I'm eternally grateful that, you know, we had a second attempt, and from that point on, I made sure that I had all my equipment on our like road trip styled interviews and everything. Like I will never make that mistake ever again. It was terrible. So,
I appreciate that story because I need to hear stuff like that because I'm going to be doing a live stream at Policon at the end of the month.
Oh, cool.
And so it's like I keep making like a mental note of like all the shit that I need to bring so that I could like, you know, have the podcast stuff and like have the video stream and all these things. And I'm just like, what am I going to forget in Canada, and hope that I could like prime to somewhere down there when I'm there. Yep. So, yeah, it should be fun. If you get a chance, you should definitely come out to Texas sometime. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, Texas is not as far as one would think from Atlanta, so I should certainly consider that. So I'm going to take a note of that and actually see if I can get it out there. Yes, double check your double checks.
Yeah, I'm terrible with that. Like, well, like my memory was shit before, but then after the car accident a couple of years ago, my memory's been like even shittier. So it's yeah. There's some days that I don't even remember like what I had for lunch like after I ate it.
Oh, I'll go to the refrigerator and then I'll just stand in front of it for a good 30 seconds and go, what was I here for? I'm definitely, the 40s are creeping up on me.
40s are weird, man, because I turned 40 last year, and yeah, it didn't feel as fucked up though as 35. For some reason, 35 felt really fucking weird. 40 was just kind of like, you know, it's all. There's been
I
a
think
couple.
it's the realization that it's that realization that you're like, oh my God, I'm actually am middle aged. I think that's where that kind of like that shock value hits at 35, and then like 40, it's kind of like I'm 37, and so for me, it's just kind of like, all right, great, it's just downhill from this point on. Like, my shoulder hurts for no reason now, so it's just you start breaking down.
And well, it's kind of weird too, because like when I turned 35, I started getting like a little tiny like streak of white in my beard, and then just as the years go on, it's just like more and more, where it's just like, I'm gonna look like fucking Santa Claus in a couple of years, which I'm not upset about that. I think that'd be kind of like funny to do the like whole ho 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 thing. The forgetful shit though, a few times now, I've like put stuff in my fridge thinking it was my microwave and wondering why I haven't heard a beep yet, and then being like, where the fuck did I put that food? And it's just like sitting in my fridge, where I'm just like, why would my brain even think that the fridge is now a microwave? Like, it's like I literally take stuff out of the fridge, put it on a plate, and then put it like back in the fridge on the plate, and like, sitting around like 15 minutes later, it's like, where's the beep?
Well, if there's one thing that I'm appreciative as a photographer of my age, is that my like long distance viewing has gotten really kind of crummier. But like when I get up under like my 8x10 here, like when I see focus land, like it's just like I don't question it. Like I could get in there with a loop, but I see it lands, it's like dead on and everything. So, fingers crossed that I keep that for as long as possible. But I'm thankful for like that precision. Like I'll still focus manually and all that stuff, and and so I have not had a need for getting a diopter or any of that stuff. So hopefully, age does not take that away from me, right? So take anything else other than my eyes. So.
Yeah, that's the one thing I get super freaked out about as I get older is my vision, because like I'm also noticing more floaties in my eyes, and I'm just like, ugh. But I do have to admit, I've been admiring your 8x10 in the background there, and so what's the story with that guy?
So that's the Intrepid 8x10 Mark II. It kind of was just kind of like just progressing up through the formats. It was just like, yeah, I had the TLR and everything, but I never really kind of like took it seriously initially. And so it was like, oh, I'm going to get this 35 millimeter camera, and like I shot with an X700 forever, and then that X700 turned into the Mamiya what is it, AFD2. And I was like shooting 645 for a while, and then I was like, oh, I got to go bigger, and then got a Shenhao 4x5, and then shot on that. I still have that camera. It's a fantastic camera. I love my Shenhao, and it's kind of funny. A lot of people think it's a Chamonix, but kept shooting it for a while, and I just kind of said, I don't want to ever see myself going 8x10, and then at the beginning of this year, I don't know what possessed me. I was just like, I'm going to get an 8x10 camera. And so, like, I did a lot of research, like, the entry into, like, a decent 8x10, like, the price jump is, like, substantial, right?
Mm-hmm.
So So I just kind of threw it out onto like Twitter and just said, hey, those that shoot 8x10, what do you guys think? And, a lot of people chimed in about Intrepid. And so, the people that I spoke to privately about Intrepid, they're not perfect cameras, but I mean, what would you get for it at the price point that they're at? They're fantastic cameras. And so, this one, worked out great for the longest time. And then I think just Georgia humidity just changed the wood differently. And there was a little bit of separation between the film holder and then and the film holder itself, and then the back standard. And it was like the slightest little gap, and like it just started flashing, long exposures in that corner. And so, I reached out to Intrepid, and they were like super like, like we're sending you another compartment, another piece that hooks back into there, and see if that fixes it. And so while that was coming, I ended up kind of just putting felt completely all around the edges, and that solved the problem. Like, and I haven't had any issues with like focus. Like the focus plane is still like dead on and everything. And so I got the spare components and everything, but I haven't had a need to, swap it out yet, because this thing is like, yeah, there you go, Mr. Will. But my Holga does not have light leak. I have a Magic Holga. And we should talk about Holga Week too, because I am judging that. But my Holga, I swear, is like the sharpest Holga, because like that thing is. I bought it for like $30, and I was just like, "Damn, this thing is actually pretty damn good for a $30 camera." And I did it in a studio, and it was. I was really impressed with it. So yes. I don't get light leaks on my Holga, maybe some of the older stuff. But so anyway, so yeah, this 8x10, I heard things about, light leaks and stuff like that. And so I started off with some really cheap film. Just started, rifling through that. For the most part, I shot 4x5 for so long that like progressing to 8x10 was like no big deal. And so at that point, it was just like became second nature to me. And then I just, I was like, all right, now I'll buy, Portra 160 or Portra 400 for it, because, those are like, $200 for like 10 sheets, so more now. I think it's like $250. So, it's kind of funny because, in interviewing like Clyde Butcher, Clyde would say, hey, I would go out, and if the clouds weren't right, I wasn't even going to take a picture, and I was just like, yeah, but I mean, if you do all that, like, especially walking through like swamps and stuff like that, at least like take a picture and like make it worth it, right? Just like force that one shot. And he's like, no, not, if it's not right, it's not right. I'm not going to take that picture. And with 8x10, when I get there and if it's not right, I won't waste the money to take that shot, because if it's like Portra 400, I'm like, this shot's going to cost me $25.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to spend that. That's just, like throw that money, rip it up and, throw it away, because that's essentially what you're doing if you're going to try to force the shot. So I certainly, 8x10 has certainly given me a level of discipline that, I'm very selective about my shots. Just simply because the amount of money is very real. The cost behind it is very real. So even then, like a roll of 36 for me now, like takes forever, because I'm just, and it's not because of the money. It's just I'm so selective about going, is this worth taking a picture on this? And like, no, but am I on like any kind of shortage of film? No. I mean, I'm finding rolls. I mean, I got a roll of film right here, just within arm's reach. If I, so it's just, that's the mindset that, I kind of started taking on from, just these larger formats. And 36 will take me forever now. Like I used to be able to turn through a roll like a day. Now it's like a few weeks, especially if I'm like testing film. Like I just need to, just be like, hey, I'm testing out this is one of the roll films. I can't really show it too much. Maybe I'll talk about it a little bit later tonight. But it's just a test roll. I got like 400 feet of it. Why am I being so selective on it? It like, stop it, Bill. Go take 3 or 4 pictures of the same thing. Like do an exposure test. Do one under, one over, one in the middle. You know, like I just can't do it. You know, so but yeah, it's just that's the discipline that I've had, and you know, and I think you know the funny mantra that people say, oh, film slows me down. Well, you know, everybody kind of has their own reasons for it. And, you know, some people burn through it. You know, they'll go on a week-long trip and, you know, burnt through 40 rolls, and I burnt through 4. You know, it's just everybody's kind of different as far as their approach with film.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I've definitely noticed 4x5 slowed me down a lot. I'm in the process of making a jump to 8x10. I'm either buying an Intrepid in Texas or a Deerdorf here.
Yeah.
My friend Henry has been teasing me with his, he has this beautiful Deerdorf 8x10, and he showed it to me a few months ago being like, hey, look at this. And I was like, this is beautiful. Do you want it? Nah, I don't want to sell it. You know, me and this camera, we've been through so much. And then like the other week, he's like, I think it might be time to sell the Deerdorf. And I'm like, oh really? What do you want for it? I don't know if I want to sell it now. It's like, God damn it. And I stopped by his house to drop off.
Well, you know,
oh, so go ahead.
I was gonna say, you know, it's funny though. Like at the same time, like Deerdorfs and all that, they're beautiful cameras and everything. I personally, for me, like if it was a camera that, you know, beautiful, that rare, I probably would be less inclined to shoot it. Like if this thing like toppled over or something like that, I'm like, yeah. Or well, I mean, yeah, I'd be kind of bummed because you know it's still kind of expensive camera, but like at the same time, just like, okay, well that's the you know the risk of the game. I know like you know Ben Horn, you know he's had numerous 8x10 cameras, you know, get blown over and then they bust open and all that stuff. So you know these cameras, like for me at least, I'm not going to buy a camera that's going to sit up on the shelf and not be used. Like I'm going to use the camera, like every camera. Like you know, some people will even freak out the way that I handle my M6. You know, they're like, why are you holding it like that? Why do you have it over your shoulder? Put it around your neck. I'm
just
like,
use it. It's a tool.
Just use it, you know? And so, like, if people will say it has patina. No, it beat the hell up, you know? And you know, those types of cameras have been, you know, been to war and back, you know? Like, they're designed to take a beating. And so any of my cameras that I have, they're going to be put to work, you know, and so not you know, little ornaments on the wall.
Well, so the Deerdorf would probably end up just being like a studio camera mostly, for that very reason. Like it's a beautiful camera. Like I went to his house to drop off a tripod on the weekend that I borrowed, and he's like, you have a few minutes? And I was like, I did have a few minutes, but it turned into a couple of hours, which I didn't have. And so I was like, I was rushing to get to a shoot afterwards, but, yeah, he's like, well, now that you finally brought my tripod back, we can set up the Deerdorf and I can show you how large format works. And I'm like, Henry, I know how large. He's like, nope, I need to show you. Cause he used to be a photo teacher for like decades. So he like showed me all of the cool things about his Deerdorf and all the lenses he had and everything. And, then he's like, well, now that I've tortured you with this, I hope that I've effectively dissuaded you from wanting to purchase this camera. I'm like, no, I really want to buy it more now. He's like, well, all right. And I'm like, okay, so what? He's like, all right, well, thanks for visiting. Okay, I'm just going to like, I'll see myself out. So I don't know. I might end up with a Deerdorf, but who knows? Definitely still thinking about the Intrepid though, just to have like a camera to take out in the field, because I just like you said, they're precious and they're kind of rare, so I wouldn't want to like smash it up. I'm curious though, have you, because it's obvious that you hate money just as much as every other photographer does, Have you gone down the path of 8x10 Polaroid yet?
Yes, and it's over there, but I have shot a box of it, and actually, I got to send the processor back. Matt Marash was incredibly gracious to let me borrow his Polaroid 8x10 holder and processor, and it's an amazing process.
Mm-hmm.
Difficult to shoot because you're literally dealing with dynamic range that's much narrower than slide film. And like you're talking literally like 3 to 4 stops of dynamic range. So like for me, it's, I don't really think in that terms of, how I expose, I'm so used to meter for your shadows and stuff like that. So it's absolutely a different beast. Once you have figured it out though, it's beautiful. And so I got Matt Marash actually sent me a DM. He's like, hey, can I get that processor back? I'm like, I need to send that back like right away, So Matt, if you ever watch this, man, thank you so much for letting me borrow it. And I promise you, I'm gonna get mailed this week. I promise.
They're getting a bit harder to find now.
Yeah.
Unless you pay the Cat Labs tax.
And Dunwoody Photo has the processor, but it doesn't work. And so I was like, oh, maybe I'll get a crank for it and see if the crank, because there's a little slot on the side where you can just do it by hand, and then it's
what's broken.
You don't have to worry about the motor.
What's broken with their processor?
I think it's just it just doesn't turn on. So I think the rollers and everything are still perfectly fine. It just doesn't power on.
You should, if they're not watching or anything, you should give them a low ball offer on it and take it home. What's probably wrong with it is there's a power capacitor that always explodes on them due to age. It's like a $5 part. You just swap that out.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Well, they're good friends, so I'm sure the guys over at Dunwoody will, if I can say, hey, can I borrow this and see if I can get it working, they'll probably just say, yeah, go for it. So I'll take you up on it. I might actually shoot you DM on that, and then that's good news for me to just get the holder then at that point. So, and I see my friend Julie Hunter is down here. She's also a guest on the show.
Oh, nice.
So we had a fantastic conversation about the organization that she ran, which was called Rise, and that was a network between models and photographers that had a platform where they could talk about creepy photographers and guys with cameras and stuff like that, where they can warn each other about that environment and overall give each other support. She started an amazing program, and highly recommend for both photographers and models, if they're listening to this or watching this, to definitely give it to check that out. I don't think Julie's running that anymore. She is on to other amazing projects, but the group is very much still running, and she started an amazing thing.
That's awesome. It's good to have like that kind of like register and catalog and stuff, because sadly there are a lot of creepy dudes with cameras out there that use it as a tool of being all predatory and shit, and it's kind of ugly.
Yeah, it was right during the Me Too movement and everything, and so one of the things that Steven and I said, hey, this is like a legitimate thing. And I think that was kind of like our first, the show was always about bantering and talking about stuff and making fun of the industry and stuff like that. But like this one was like our first one where we were like, we have to treat this so respectfully going into this, and that there's legitimate trauma that was behind it. And so to kind of go into that with wanting to legitimately learn about this was very eye opening, and so and to a certain regard, it was just really disappointing to see how there are some photographers out there who really take advantage for all the wrong reasons, of being a photographer, and it makes it harder on people who actually legitimately have a true appreciation for the process, and for the art. Um, so the program that she put together was really kind of like an amazing thing for us, because it was certainly bringing awareness. And was very proud of that episode. Julia, I don't know if we ever kind of talked about that, but what we accomplished in that was just amazing. There was a little bit of hesitancy that, it was going to stir up a base of photographers, but no, everybody was like so incredibly respectful of that episode, and the feedback that they provided was overwhelmingly positive. So that really was one of those, like, I felt like, yes, we did something awesome with that.
That's really incredible. It's
yeah.
There needs to be a lot more awareness around that, because it's still a huge problem. And
absolutely.
Just men in general need to figure out how to behave a lot better, because there's a lot of problematic dudes out there, and just get fucking therapy, call your dad and tell him to get fucked, or like, I don't know, jerk off at home before you go out and ruin someone else's day. Like there's like 1,000,001 things you can do to, like, be less of a dick and not shit on other human beings. Just do that.
Right.
Sorry.
Well, and there's definitely responsibility with, especially with models, if you're about to do a shoot with a photographer that you've never met, don't go by yourself, definitely, bring your friend, or, there definitely have been kind of like, bring the boyfriend along and everything. And I have done shoots like that where they're like, "Hey, do you mind if I bring my boyfriend?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, come on, bring it." We're just we're doing a photo shoot. Let's have fun and everything. So
yeah, exactly.
I mean, there's definitely.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
There's a balance between that.
Yeah, definitely. And
there's a good balance between two.
To models too, like if a photographer is not cool with that idea of like, hey, I want to bring my boyfriend along, just like watch, or I want to bring a friend, then that's a total red flag. Like, it's like, why doesn't you want that? Like, if someone was coming to shoot in the studio here and they're like, hey, I want some like homies to come by, or like whatever, now that we've beat COVID and the pandemic's over, it's totally cool to have people in the studio here. So it's like, yeah, I would actually like prefer that more often than not, because it can kind of go both ways. I've heard of some like horror stories of like, models like condemning photographers because they didn't like how the editing went, or like something, like insert whatever excuse here. And, all people can be shitty, but mostly men lately. Well, not lately. For like
absolutely.
The last few centuries, maybe millennia,
Right.
Yeah. Guys, do better. If you see sketchy shit, say something about it. Don't like, I don't know. I watched the Woodstock documentary this week, and fuck me. What a disappointment. Like, just the behavior of all of the people in that thing, of on all sides. Like, I understand why they rioted and all of that, but an interesting thing kind of hit me while watching that travesty unfold, is that the kids of Woodstock 99 are the adults of the freedom stuff today.
Well, I will admit, I have not watched the documentary yet, so you have me intrigued. So I'm going to have to jump in and watch that. So,
it's a fucking travesty. Like, you watch it and you're like, yeah, this is why their planet's burning. Like, We shouldn't fix it. We should just let it burn, and so that it can heal without us. Because we don't have basic
Come
human
up from the
decency.
ashes.
Yeah, come up from the ashes. We can come back as some sort of like other creature that maybe will be, kinder and gentler to those beings. It was really interesting and kind of fascinating. I won't do any spoilers on it, but Fred Durst is a dick in it, unsurprisingly. But they tried to blame a bunch of shit on him, and it's like, he's totally a dick, but like this wasn't his fault. And it also was a bit triggering because there was all of those like styles and like, those personalities from like 99, 2000 that I had worked really hard to sort of like bury in the parts of my brains where all of the trauma goes. It brought all of that shit back. Like, it was worth the watch.
I'll have to add that onto my list. So yeah, it's been a while. I think the last documentary I really watched was the Chernobyl one, and even after that one, I was like, oof, this was a lot to take in.
That was a really good one. That was really well done. They did a great job on that one. Actors were great in it too. I like the actors that they had in that. Yeah, the Woodstock one is interesting because no actors, a lot of douchebags.
Yeah,
mostly all of the people that like were the money people behind it were douchebags. Very white. It's a very white documentary.
I'll definitely have to give that a watch then. So I don't know, bust out a bottle of bourbon and just kind of just get to the bottom of that bottle by the end of the documentary.
Yeah, it's 3 hours long if you want to do it in one sitting because it's like 3 episodes or like an hour piece. So it's like I watched 2 back to back, and it's like I can't handle the more of this poison. So it's like I let it digest for a couple of days, and then I'm like, all right, let's finish this last one off. So with photography stuff, what has been one of your favorite moments, or like a really unexpected moment that you've had that you otherwise probably wouldn't have come across if it wasn't for getting into this crazy thing that we do?
That's a tough one.
First thing that comes to mind.
So the first one that comes to mind is Clyde Butcher. So I had the opportunity or the privilege to go down to Florida and sit down and interview him. And, it was, we got into talking about gear and stuff like that, but it was so much more than that. It was, understanding him as a photographer. And by the end of that, I had taken so much from that like, it kind of changed me and how I thought about photography in general. And I'll finish, this story out with a quote with this, but, after the interview, it was just kind of like the kind of knowledge that he shared with me was just something that is going to live with me forever. And, and so what he said to me, and I think it was definitely a burden kind of lifted off my shoulders, because the Studio C41 was always built around film photography, this camera and that camera, the film is better than digital and all that stuff, right? And then after sitting down with them, he said, film or digital, photography is the medium. Light is light.
Yeah, I like
that. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like it just, at the end of that, it just was, I left knowing there was this weight lifted off my shoulders that I don't need to be, this film photography guy or whatever. Like it's just, it's the medium that I want to photograph on. At the end of the day, it's good light and, how to use that light to tell your story as an artist. And whether it's on digital or not, it's up to you. And take care, Mr. Holga.
See you later, Mr. Holga.
Jump on here, man. But yeah, that was just like a huge weight lifted off my shoulders, and that is something that's going to take, it's going to stick with me. And so the icing on the cake out of all that was after the interview, he was just like, "That was a really great interview," and I was like, "Yeah, it was awesome. I really appreciate it." He goes, "Yeah, yeah, you want to go get some ice cream?" And I was just like, "Sure, let's go get some ice cream." And so, like, him and his wife, me and my wife, we were sitting down. I can't remember the ice cream place, but we were just sitting there and we were just talking gear and, Deer dwarf cameras and shift lenses and stuff like that. And then we finished the ice cream. We went back to his gallery, and the light was just perfect. And so I took his portrait on 4x5, and it is an image that I cherish. And I left there buying one of his silver gelatin prints. So that was an incredible moment for me, that out of all the interviews and the people that I had the privilege to interview, that one really, really stuck with me, and it will stick with me for a very long time.
That's super cool. I mean, who doesn't like ice cream? Even lactose intolerant people love ice cream. Like,
it's worth it. It's worth it.
I mean, I used to have dairy problems, and I would still put myself through the pain of it because, like, fucking cheese is life. But I like that. Like, light is light, and that's one of the things that I just loathe becoming more involved in the photography community the last few years, is that there's just this like fight between film and digital, and like, what's better and what makes you more of like a real photographer, like whatever. And it's just all kind of bullshit to me. Like, whatever tool you can find that works for what you want to create, that's the best tool. Like, if it's film, awesome. If it's digital, cool. Like, as long as you're having fun and creating things that you enjoy, and if by some luck they also resonate with other people, then that's wicked awesome. But the whole people have tried to like suck me into the whole like film digital debate, and I hate that shit. Like, that's one of the like chief things when I checked out that granary thing I disliked immediately was you had to like put your fucking gear in before you could even post anything. And I'm like, I don't remember what shit I use most of the time. Like, I don't even remember what film it is half the time. Like, luckily most of the time I shoot with like my Nikon F5 with a 50 mil, so it's like 80% of the time it's that camera. But the odd time I decide to use something else, I don't know. I was borrowing a friend's Leica M3. I can't remember what rolls I use the M3 for.
Yeah,
and it was kind of annoying because I also felt like it excludes a lot of interesting creators too, because there's so many great photographers out there that shoot digital. So like, why cap them off? Like, it would be cool if someone made something that just like celebrated photography, but that wasn't Flickr. Like Instagram just for photography. Because it's interesting when I hear people complain about like how Instagram doesn't care about photographers anymore and blah blah blah. Instagram's never cared about photographers. It's never been about that. Like, we just adopted the platform as photographers because it was image based. So we were like, oh well, we put images here, so obviously this is for us. It's like, no, it never was for us. We co-opted it. And like, I don't know, for me, it still works really great because like, I don't really use it for photography. I use it to talk to people like you, to connect with interesting folks. And to that end, it still works really fucking well. Like,
yeah,
I don't have any complaints.
It's kind of funny because, it's kind of interesting because I know like when my wife got into film photography, she wanted to select a camera, and so I think she had it better than me because she had a wall here of cameras that she could select from. Like, it's like the Matrix. Like, well, what do you want for today? well, I hear a lot of people talking about the M6, so can I try the M6? I'm like, all right, here you go, try the M6. She's just like, or here, try out the Hasselblad 500 cam. Like, these are cameras that, like, it just, I've acquired over time.
Yeah.
So for her, it was just like all these holy grail cameras that people wanted to try, and it was kind of funny because, and I don't say this funny as in I'm laughing at her. Ironic would probably be more the correct word out of this, but she was missing focus. And she had these really great shots and everything, and then they were just soft, and she was really getting defeated by, just not them being tack sharp as she wanted. And I said, Jess, maybe you should get an autofocus camera. And we had a really hard debate around that because she felt like it's not appreciated if like autofocus does the work for you, and there's this thought process that you have to kind of endure the suck in order to appreciate the photography, right? And it was kind of interesting to get that. I was like, Jess, who cares? Nobody's going to remember if the lens, what camera or lens you use. Like, if it's a great image should speak for itself. And I was like, let's just try. And so we got her an EOS 1N.
Nice.
And
that's a really nice
millimeter 1.8. And it's a great camera. We got a great deal on it over at KEH Camera. And we did a couple trips with it, and like her images were like dead sharp every single time, and she was just having fun. And I was like, this is it. I was like, you are supposed to be having fun with this, and that's the most important. There's no having to endure the suck in order to have fun with photography. And the only reason why I prefer like a Hasselblad or even like a manual focus camera like this is at least for me, I am very in tune to the process. It's like driving, classic cars. I think is probably the best comparison, is that the feedback that you get from your car are all the reasons why you're more in tune with whatever you're using to drive it with, right? Mm-hmm. So for me, manual focus, I'm just so in tune to the feedback that I'm getting back from the camera that's what is fun for me. So so for her, she has a much better selection of images at the end of the day with her stuff, and that's the most important thing out of it. You don't have to go through the thick of it to get to a certain level of being a great photographer. It never really, made sense to me. We have all our different approaches to how we want to photograph, and so she enjoys the process, and that's all that matters at the end of it. So I completely agree with you that it's kind of interesting with grainery. I think it's kind of a bit of a double-edged blade, and I completely understand your perspective on this, and I hope that Kyle Grainery certainly considers this, because I know he kind of gave a statement on some of the feedback that he got where he's like, hey, eventually we'll get to that point. Mm-hmm. And I think, at least for me, I give him a little bit of grace, because he's literally just one dude that is, developing this platform. And it's interesting because, during my day, I work with software development as well, that he's starting off with a platform that is so small and so like a very small population that he gets that so right, lay down the foundational work, and then go for the big fish. Yeah. And from a growth perspective, it's this very fine balance, right? Like, if he can do that right, and then say, okay, now we're going to do digital cameras, then I completely agree with that. I completely agree with you that in the sense that you shouldn't close out from other people. I think that the timing of his platform and then this dejection of Instagram that happened was just really bad timing for him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at the same time, it was kind of, I don't want to say it backfired on him per se, but, he kind of got a bad PR from, deleting some of those digital images from the platform. And he even said that he absolutely hated doing it.
Yeah, I saw
but,
his apology about that. Well, and not really apology, but like
so,
statement about it.
Right. So it's a delicate balance. I do hope that he does open it up, because you're absolutely right. I would love to see more photographers enter the platform. I think variety as far as the platforms that we jump on is important.
Mm-hmm.
And then making sure that, we find the right one. Because I remember I was one of the very early people that jumped on Vero. And like the version of Vero that I was on, it was like, hey, we need a license from you and like your personal information. I was like
a driver's license?
Signed in. Yeah. It was just
what
like,
the fuck?
Hold on, I just signed in and we're getting married now. I was like, nah, I'm out. So now, granted, that was a long time ago. This was like 2016, 17. Vero's been out for a while, so they went through, like, when I signed back in to see, okay, what were they doing? There was a whole big revamp of it. So like that wasn't even a thing at that point, so like there was like a whole complete restructure. They might have even sold ownership. I don't even know. I shouldn't even say that because I don't even know. But so when I heard Vero was kind of like the hot topic, I was just like, interesting. I'm surprised, and then I was more interested in getting back into it. And so I signed back in. There was the two people that I followed very early on, and at that time it was Mike Padua and Zach Arias. And so those were the only two people that I followed at the time very early on, and they were still there and everything like that. So I don't know. I agree with you. Instagram is a great tool for me to communicate. Not because of the followers or anything along those lines, but like, the connectivity that we're having with each other and being able to, network with each other has been a great tool for me. So for me, at least, Instagram is where I'm kind of hanging out. I've dabbled with Reels and TikTok and all that stuff, and got a lot of growth from it. I'm not going to lie from it. But I did it because it was a creative outlet, and I thought, hey, let's just try and have fun with this. And so it kind of stuck to a certain extent, right? And the people were like, oh, you did that one where, you and your wife and everything along those lines. And, I was just like, how do you remember that, guys? Like, that was like a 15-second clip. I'm shocked that, 15 seconds could be so resounding for somebody, So like, I felt like, nothing against like, Maddie, over on YouTube or anything along those lines, where he was just like, he's very like anti TikTok because of just short form content.
Dude, I fucking love TikTok.
Me, at least,
I don't post on it much, but yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, it's just like, if you have a good story to tell, then you can, that's what kind of like made sense for me, was like the challenge of how do I make something resound with somebody within 15 seconds, right? And so like I was so used to these big productions on YouTube and all that stuff, and like putting so much money into a production, and then only get a couple thousand views, and then I do something really stupid, for 15 seconds, and then, it gets, 15 or a 500,000 views. It's just like, it didn't, it was hard for me to kind of grasp that. And then that's kind of where I was just like, I'm kind of done with YouTube, right? Like the amount of time and effort that I was putting into creating content on YouTube was, much more time consuming than something that was on TikTok or Reels or whatever. And, it was fun while it lasted and everything. And hopefully at one point, I'll certainly come back to it. But I have more of an interest in, making the cinema film right now.
That's really cool about the cinema film. I just signed up for Vero, so if you want to be my friend, I'm Merlin DB on there. I may not post on it a lot like Granary. I think I have like 6 photos on Granary, but whatever. Convince me to make a move. But so for me, Instagram's always been about community and connecting with people, and using visual as the medium for it. And I've always been drawn to that because there's a lot of honesty in imagery. And, versus something like Twitter or something like Facebook or things like that, where you make these big, long, elaborate posts. Like, sometimes I put wordy shit in my photos, but it's just neat being able to connect with the visual things that are important to other people. Because it's interesting to see what's important to other people. Because, when people are like, genuinely posting on Instagram, it's an interesting snapshot of their lives and things that they care about and things that are important. And like, there's that fakery, of course, but that's everywhere. Like, you find that in real life too. Like, there's, as long as humans exist, we're always going to be doing dumb shit to like make us look better than we probably are.
Sure.
But on the thing with your wife there of like, the torturing yourself to be an artist about it. Like, I don't understand why people think that should be a thing. Like, I've taken some great photos. People seem to like them. I've been told they're like, by some people. I'm really fucking lazy though, and I have no idea how my camera really works. So it's like most of the shit I do is on like a Nikon F5. Autofocus is on that thing. I use aperture priority, and it's just kind of like I figured out a method that kind of works. And even when I shoot manual stuff, like the M3 was cool, because like you said, once you spend some time with it, like an old car or something like that, you're like, I don't need to actually meter because this lighting looks like, I used like F8 and like a 125th with this lighting before. So you're just like, that's probably what I'll do on this one. And then even with like focusing, like once you get used to distances, you don't even have to really use the rangefinder most of the time. You can just be like, this is what I'm going to do.
It's a point and shoot.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where like, I never really understood the Leica hype. And I always thought there was like a degree of douchebaggery around it until I used the M3. And then I was like, well, fuck. There's still a lot of douchebaggery, but now I want one. Like, it just...
If you can't beat them, join them.
Well, and I got to say, like, it is an excellent piece of machinery. So if you're into street photography and you like something light that you could just like walk around with, it's great. I don't think there's anything better than it. And that's why when you look at like so many of the street photographers that are prolific out there, they're all shooting some kind of Leica because it's a good piece of kit and you don't have to worry about it breaking down. Like, it's pretty freaking robust. So as I understand,
it's kind of funny though. It's kind of funny though, like, some of the photographers that I really enjoy their street photography aren't using Leicas and stuff like that. Like, I really appreciate, I know Stanley, if Stanley's still here, Ed Conde, he out in LA, he shoots a lot with an LCA. And
that's a great little camera too.
And it's a fantastic little camera. It's not expensive, and it definitely has its flaws, but like, he has certainly leaned in to those flaws and knows how to exploit them and everything along those lines. And I really appreciate it. He sent me a nice layover is the name of the zine where he was in between airports and he has a little bit of a layover, and so he's like, I'm going to just walk around with this LCA and take some pictures. And I really enjoyed his photography from that little zine. And I was just like, dude, Ed, these images are amazing. What did you shoot on this? He's like, this little Loma LCA. I was like, damn, okay, all right. I mean, so Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong. I mean, like I have three Leicas. I mean, I hate to admit, but um, it's good. It's dependable equipment. And I enjoy the Leicas that I have, but there's definitely been a lot of cameras that I went after and then got it in my hands, and I'm like, this is shit. I'm not blown away by it, and I don't know what the hype is around it, so I ended up selling it right, 2 days later. Um, I think that's just kind of the progression, and I think what was it? It's kind of funny, like the point and shoot stuff, right? So a lot of
Mhm.
people don't understand the hype around point and shoots and the prices that skyrocketed and
Oh,
everything
they're
along the lines,
insane.
right? So they're insane, and I picked one up that I actually have quite enjoyed, probably surprisingly too much, and it's a Nikon AF600,
Oh,
and
that's
it's
a
a
great
28
little
millimeter
camera.
yeah. So
Yeah.
you know exactly what I'm talking about. But a lot of people never really paid attention to it till just now recently. I don't know why, but it's a 3.5
Hmm.
aperture, right? So a lot of people kind of get turned off that. Like, I don't know why so many people are like, oh, you got to have a 2.8, right? Like, you're not really going to, you're not going to get any control in aperture in a you can't stop down. It's all going to be the shutter speed at that point, right?
Well, and the problem with
So I
something
never
that's small
really
and
understood.
light is you can't take advantage of a wide aperture anyways, because unless you're putting it on a tripod, it's so light you're going to get some kind of shake with it. Like it's like
Exactly.
nearly impossible.
Yeah. So, but I will admit that this one Nikon AF600, it was just kind of nice to just throw it in there and just not think about it, and then just go and have fun. And then, like, I was legitimately impressed with getting some of these images back where, like, the colors were just very saturated, the way that the lenses and put the light onto the film, like, just the colors were just so punchy, and I was just like, whoa, this was kind of fun, so, like, to a certain extent, like, I still will never pay $600-700 for a GR1 or whatever or anything, but, like, or even a Contact T2, but, like, this, like, it kind of changed my mind a little bit that, hey, you know what, for $150, $200, yeah, I'll throw that in for point shoot, just so that I can throw that into my pocket and have the power of a 28 millimeter, without a shoulder bag and all that stuff. $150, that might be worth it, and
Yeah.
if you kind of think about, if and I think I saw Brandon Remler connect in here, if he's still connected in over at Fujifilm, if Fujifilm ever brought back a film point and shoot and they sold it for $1,000, I'd pay for it. I'll be honest, I'll pay $1,000 for a brand new point and shoot camera. I'd do it.
Yeah.
I think that the technology that would go into it, I think, would be a fair price at that point. So when you kind of think about it, for a new camera, for a new point and shoot camera, $1,000 is not crazy, I don't think.
No, I don't think it's crazy at all for a new one. It's
Yeah.
crazy that people are spending that on old ones. And
Mm.
like you said, sometimes you buy cameras that you think are going to be like awesome, and then you end up hating them. One of those cameras for me was the Nikon 35 Ti.
Mm.
It is still hands down the most beautiful camera I've ever owned. It was an absolute object of desire. I still like lust for the beauty of the camera, but it was the most infuriating fucking point and shoot I've ever used. It just like, you know, almost all of the film that I got out of it was, it just pissed me off because it has like, it's a single point autofocus on it, and you have to really pay attention to where you're pointing it. Otherwise, like, it's just going to be all blurry and shit unless you're going to do manual focus. And then it had that stupid panorama switch on the back of it that if you didn't pay attention, like if you put it in your pocket or something, you could accidentally like turn that on, and now all of a sudden your fucking photos are ruined by the fake panorama bullshit. So that got gaffer taped like after the first two rolls. It ruined of that for me. And it's just like, I wanted to love that camera so bad, just so bad.
Yeah.
And I just like, I fucking hate you. Like it ended up sitting on my shelf most of the time, and I would just like see that it. I honestly like the fucking lomography reusable camera more than the 35 Ti. Like that's a cool little point and shoot. Like if you want to have something that's like cheap and cheerful and like a shit ton of fun, those lomography simple reuse cameras are so great. Like it's just, they're so cheap that you literally can just like toss it around and not feel bad about it. But the pictures that come out of it are really cool.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing that you kind of think about how long glass has been made for thousands of years, and you would think that this piece of glass is 150 years old. It's going to be utter crap.
No,
you might want to reconsider that. It's we as humans have known glass for a very long time, and the fact that we can do that to plastic now is pretty fascinating, right? So and that speaks to my little Holga that I have. That plastic is not fantastic, but certainly it can hold its own, right? So
absolutely.
But yeah, it's quite fascinating on that. So, but Brandon, I saw you reply in there. No, you make it. Fujifilm needs to bring back a point and shoot film camera. You follow Brandon Remler and harass him about it. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'd really like to see Fuji start giving a shit about customers, because that would be really cool. Like, it's like, come on, Fuji, do something that proves you love us, because like all you really do is like, hey, you really like this thing? Oh, we see you're buying it. Cool, we're gonna stop making it. Fuck you, Fuji.
The GFX 50R.
Yeah, like it's just, I'm still salty at them for killing pack film. Like that's something that I will never forgive them for. Like that's just,
Well, here, let me turn you around on that though, and to Brandon's defense on this.
Blink twice if you're safe.
I think, in my opinion, that Fujifilm, they'll say we're committed to film. I think so, and the reason why is Instax has been it's their biggest. They make a lot of money off of Instax. I'm not even going to say the number because I don't know, but I know it's a lot, right?
Yeah.
But people that get into Instax are going to naturally want to progress to the next thing, because shooting on this and seeing your image come up right there in front of you is a magical thing, right? And for some people that can be incredibly addicting, and the natural progression will be, well, what's next?
Yeah.
And then that's when they start discovering film. So I actually have to kind of tip my hat to Fujifilm to say, that the fact that they are getting people interested in film, and then that progression into, on shooting it on celluloid, I think is still, just incredibly important. So, Brandon, go ahead and just write that check next to me and just put it in the mail.
It's important. It's a gateway to go somewhere else, though, because like, yeah, you buy an Instax and then you want to shoot film. Well, Fuji keeps killing all their fucking film stocks, and they don't make film cameras anymore unless you're buying disposables. So you're like, you go down this rabbit hole, and then you end up like, buying like Ilford or Kodak instead. Instax, I love the film. The medium is a beautiful medium, and I will never shit on it from that perspective. All of the Instax cameras are just pieces of shit. Like, it's just, why have this beautiful film that is so gorgeous when you use a real camera with it? Why not make a camera that's like a little bit more? Because people will buy it. People will absolutely buy it if Fuji gave them a better option. But it's just like, I don't know, like the wide, and like specifically for the wide, like the wide options for that are just abysmal, like just fucking abysmal.
So let me ask you this though. So what would be the percentage of the people though that get into it and then they want aperture control and all that stuff? And I'll
I'm not even saying aperture control, just like a nicer camera that doesn't look like you could use it as a murder weapon. that has like, better optics on it, because it's like they could make a smaller wide camera like other people have. So it's like,
Yeah.
you don't have to have all the manual functions, but just something that gives you a cleaner image out of it. Because I've used a bunch of the different Fuji Instax wide options, and I've just never, I haven't tried the 500 yet, but I've seen it in action, and that's a nice camera. Do something like the 500 again. That was a good camera.
Yeah.
That camera respected the film enough. It's like these other cameras don't respect the film.
It's kind of interesting because I think in my mind, you have Mint that really has done some really cool stuff.
Yeah.
And I think in my mind, it's like if there's a will and somebody sees an opportunity to, let's just say, at the end of the day, it's a business, we want to make money off of it. Somebody's going to do it at a scale that's incredibly profitable for them, and Fuji just helps Fuji at the end of the day, saying, hey, if other people are making it, then we don't have to change anything we do. We just keep making what they are going to continue to buy to shoot that with. So in a way, I kind of think it kind of helps feed these startups, and we have companies like Lomography making their stuff.
Yeah,
they certainly have iterated to creating, because there have been so many people make one for 4x5, and and somebody did, and now there is an option to go out there and buy that. So I think in a weird way, trying to spin that into a positive is that Fujifilm doesn't have to do that. As long as that they create the medium to photograph on it, it creates other people to be able to do that. And getting to play with the Lomograph back, it's like the fact that they figured out how to do it and they're making money off of it at the scale that they're at, kudos to them. And it's quick and easy to kind of say, Fujifilm, you should do this, and I do it enough with Brandon and myself on our phone calls with them. But the perspective and the scope and the enlightening conversations that I have with them is that, well, it sounds like Lomography's got it figured out, or something along those lines, or that, hey, there's this new company that created a rangefinder for Instax, like that's crazy talk right there, and somebody did it, and so I don't necessarily think that Fuji is the end-all, be-all answer for it, but I do think Pac Film should not have been killed.
No, Pac Film should have never been killed. It was like fucking terrible. But also, you just made a lot of excuses for them, and you defended them a lot.
That's fair.
And you've basically excluded them from responsibility. So it's like, why should we have to do this? Because it's like, when you see someone getting beat up on the street, you're like, why should I call a cop? Someone else is going to do it. It's like, maybe you should call just in case someone else didn't. All I'm saying is Fuji has a shit ton of resources, and it would be a lot easier for them to put a dev team together to make some cool shit than it would be for a small company like Lomography, which, is probably a fart in the wind compared to some of the other dev teams that they have. Same with Mint. Like, why should they just shoulder that on them when it will absolutely make them more money? But we know that they want to make even more money, which is why they killed Pac Film for cosmetics. And, I don't hold that against them completely, but I still hold it against them,
Well, I mean, here's the crazy thing. So, like, the amount of money that Kodak made, in an entire year, and you can kind of look at their, financial statements and stuff like that. Like, Kodak made like $250 million. Like, this was a few years ago. $250 million. Fujifilm made like $3 or $4 billion.
Yeah.
So that $250 million for all of Kodak surmounted to not even 1% of what Fujifilm has their hands in. And like, even then, their photography overall, we're talking not only, Instax, but as well as their X cameras and stuff like that, still surmounts to like 3%, 3 or 4% of everything else that Fuji does.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I remember seeing headlines during COVID that Fujifilm was, working on some kind of vaccination, and then their Fujifilm stock like went through the roof at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Their investments in medical certainly help push, for people to have fun with cameras.
Yeah.
So it's quite fascinating once you kind of put those pieces in together and you can kind of see where those things start to line up. That like all of that Kodak made for an entire year didn't even make up for 1% of what Fuji made, and that just it's kind of like a mind blown moment when you kind of see that land.
Yeah, but it's even mind blowing. Even though they're smaller, they still cared about their customers a lot more. and not to completely shit on Fuji, because like as much as I like to do that, I have a Fuji printer thingy that is really fucking cool. For the YouTube, I'm broadcasting video off of an XT2 X mount camera. My digital shooter when I'm out on the streets is a Fuji X Pro 2. I begrudgingly buy Fuji products because they're good, but I know that like an abusive stepdad, they don't really love you.
Well, I'm trying, Brandon. I'm trying, buddy. I'm trying to help Merlin here out. So, but
Brandon, you should come do an episode sometime, and I would love to like hear a Fuji take, and I promise I would be gentle. So if you're
Brandon's
down,
a great guy.
if you're down, give me a follow and DM me, and I would love to be converted. I will hold one of those signs. It's like show me like I don't think Fuji cares. Change my mind.
He's a great guy, though. He certainly has been, because I was definitely on the fuck Fujifilm train when Pacfilm was dying off and everything.
Yeah.
And there was an article that I wrote years ago about the kind of understanding where things were kind of like, the realization that Fujifilm was kind of getting out of the film game before they even realized that it was making a resurgence, right? So like I kind of wrote an article that kind of went viral as a result of that, and that's when he reached out, and we had he didn't drop any secrets or anything along those lines, but he certainly kind of brought perspective that kind of in a way kind of matured me in an understanding how the industry interconnects with each other and how one decision can impact another. And, and I think that I have to really tip my hat to him for, kind of educating me on how everything, to always consider, when Fujifilm said we're not making 400H anymore, like the first thing that came to my mind was, what are the guys at the Alaris thinking right now? Because now there's no substitute for a Pro 400 film.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody, all the wedding photographers are now going to jump on the Portra 400 bandwagon because they have to now. And it's exactly what happened. It completely messed up all of Alaris's forecasting, and then they had to go back to the drawing board and go.
Well, it wasn't just that. There was also factory issues too. So it was like a perfect storm of Fuji pulling out of a medium, and then Kodak being overwhelmed. And then, you got to think, like, the Kodak factory is like over 100 years old. There's components that they use every day to make film that are like, like octogenarian age. Like it's kind of wild. And I was talking to Tim Ryugo about this, and he's like, I don't function as well as I did when I was in my 30s or 40s. So it's like, how do you think this equipment feels? And so it's just like,
and then you're operating them in the dark.
yes. And so it's, I understand all of that, sort of like the business relations and all those things, from work. 'Cause like I do that kind of stuff with tech, and you have to understand like supply chain and like all these different things, and how like, the heat wave in China, that is going to really suck for all of us in a few more weeks. Like we don't feel the pain right now, but the pain's coming. And then the fucking canal is blocked up again. Another shipping, no, it was a oil tanker this time, blocked it up. So it's like between that and China, you know, if you need electronic shit, batteries, things like that, buy them right now before they get like insanely expensive in a couple of weeks. Like, you know,
all it can take is one bad typhoon and it messes up, you know, a whole production line for an entire supply chain. You know, it's crazy that, you know, how fragile in general the supply chain can be, coming from the Pacific.
And it's just, it's crazy how fragile our world is that we take for granted all the time. Like, I think it was last month or something like that. One of our major internet providers in Canada, someone did a massive career limiting move and fucked up a configuration on a core router somewhere that basically deleted Rogers from the internet and thus stranding all of their customers, internet, telephone, the whole gamut. And our government is so brilliant that they single sourced everything. So all of our government also disappeared for like a day and a half because, you know, instead of having vendor diversity where it's like, hey, you know, maybe instead of just having one provider, we should have two. Because what happens if they go? They'll never go away. But why pay for two people when you could just pay for one? And then, you know, 911 services vanished, like all these things. It was insane. People are like, well, how could this happen? And it's like, well, if you understand how the internet really works, you'd be really terrified about it because the internet's basically like three kids in a trench coat giving us websites. Like it's...
Well, and make a bad pun on saying, I didn't hear any of this.
Well, a lot of people didn't hear from anyone for a while in Canada. It was kind of funny. Like I'm with one of the other providers, so or two of the other providers. So it's like my studio was fine, my house was fine, my phone's iPad were all fine. So I couldn't make that excuse of like, oh, I can't work today because I can't connect to anything. You know, it's
darn.
But it's interesting like how fragile our world is. We take all of these conveniences for granted everywhere. Like, you know, even being able to buy film is an insane convenience. Like, you know, by all accounts, film should have died in the mid 2000s, and it did for a while. Like it was completely gone. And I think we have to like give Kodak a lot of credit for bringing it back. I don't really like their CEO very much, but you know, he did a good thing convincing Hollywood to start using film again.
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing because I think more so there's more pressure on Kodak now than they are dealing with in 2012.
Yeah,
because they're at a point, and I was just in a conversation with a friend about this the other day, that we have never seen anything like this. Like Kodak has never dealt with, you know, not being able to meet demand.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is completely different territory for Kodak, right? And 2012 was different because they were cutting fat. Now they're not. They're too lean, and they have to grow or meet that demand or grow. And so that balancing act of scales of economy to meet that demand and make investments into growing. Well, then what happens if, you know, there's this sudden shrinkage? Now they, you know, spent all this money trying to invest in something that just, you know, collapses in on them. It's a very delicate balance to iterate up for them. And I mean, they're doing really cool stuff. I don't know if you caught the news on them where they're using their film technologies for solid state lithium ion batteries.
That's really cool.
And so like I'm just sitting here going, like, I was in conversation with a friend about that, where it was just like they're trying so hard to use they're using film for, you know, what's on our LCD screens for, you know, our phones and circuitry and all that stuff. So, you know, they have their hands in a lot of other things, and stills photography, even though like there's just this crazy demand for it, it still is very, very minuscule in comparison to all the other deliverables that they have to meet as well. And like, even then, motion picture, is huge. The demand for film from the motion picture industry dwarfs stills,
Absolutely.
and the needs from it is like, it's quite fascinating because, getting into Atlanta Film Co. was kind of like, before I even jumped into it, I was talking to Kodak Hollywood and said, hey, this is my plan. This is what we want to do. Like, how good are you guys? Right? Like, because I don't want to like get into this and then, there's a shortage and then, I'm not making money and all that stuff. And they're like, nothing to worry about. Like, we've been dealing with this demand, like, and every order that I put through, I'm putting in massive orders with them just because of the sheer growth. I mean, like, this right here is 1,500 feet of film. This is like a quarter mile of film that I ordered and it was on my front doorstep in 2 days.
Yeah.
So I am very grateful that whatever Kodak Motion Picture and whatever they're doing right, there hasn't been an issue. And I keep asking them, like, how good are you guys? Because I'm just so used to like things being so bad on the still side that they're like, put as big as an order as you want. We're good. We got you covered. And so,
well, yeah, because they're the priority, because you don't want to make Hollywood wait. So, like, Hollywood's not going to be like, oh, I'll wait like 6 months or whatever. Like, no, they're not going to do that.
Right. I mean, you got Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer. It's coming out pretty soon. That's $100 million budget movie.
Mm-hmm.
That, like, you cannot miss deliverables for to move production schedules because you couldn't meet the demand for film. Like, that's brutal. Like, you have to meet that demand. The stakes are so much higher at that point. So what's 400 feet when they got to deliver hundreds of thousands of feet, and even then 65 millimeter, hundreds of thousands of feet in that regard. So, so I'm incredibly appreciative of this partnership, or with Dunwoody Photo, and then we're using the services that Kodak Motion Picture Film Lab Atlanta is offering, where we're now spooling down that motion picture film, and this is the 500T. And so we're, because one of the biggest problems that we were having at Dunwoody Photo was we would put in an order for, these color films for stills, and we were waiting 3 months. And like, we're dealing with people coming in every single day. You got any color film? You got any color film? You got a color film? And we're like, we're waiting. We put in an order months ago, and we can't get our hands on it. And so we were kind of backed into a corner. So, well, what if we tried this? And granted, it's the ramjet is on it, but let's talk to Kodak Motion Picture Film Lab Atlanta, tell them our situation, and see if we can, come up with something. And so they said, let's give it a shot. And so we've been offering it, and it's been wildly successful. And so we've opened it up to where if you're shooting your own ECN2 and stuff like that, we'll take it, so you don't have to buy Atlanta Film Co. to get access to ECN2. And so we have been keeping a steady flow, and, we get customers that come into Dunwoody Photo to say, hey, we want to buy, color film. We say, well, we have this cinema film. Yeah. And the only caveat out of all this is shoot as you would normally. Just make sure you bring it back to us, because nobody else really can process it. Maybe a couple other people, but if you bring it back to us, well, you don't need to worry about any of the other stuff that you have to deal with it. And for the most part, with the foot traffic, people are just kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, I was going to bring it back to you guys anyway. And so now we have been able to meet a demand for color negative in the Atlanta area, and it has been, I would say, word has gotten out, because now it's like, the great thing is the speed of me being able to put an order in. I'm now at a point where if I put their West Coast, so if I get an order in by 2 or 3 p.m., it will be at my front doorstep next day now. And cool. And I can spool it up, and now I can get up to close to 80 rolls on one can of 400 feet. And now we're meeting a demand for color negative, and our turnaround time is pretty consistent now. We're down to a week. So we do our batches. We'll drop off on a Tuesday, and then we let a batch grow. And then the following Tuesday, we go to drop off, and then we pick up what we dropped off the week before. And then we just do that over and over again. And it's, C41 is still significantly huge. Dunwoody Photos processing easily 150 to 200 rolls a day on color negative. And so now we're at 30, 35 rolls a week with EP2, which is not huge, but it's up. It's growing. And now we're getting people mailing it into Dunwoody Photo for processing. And so, it's, I know there's been some pushback about mixing ECN2 with the C41 world and everything along those lines. But one of the biggest things for me is to make sure that that there is a level of education that, and the second I say ECN2 to the customer, I've lost them. I don't even need to say ECN2. Like, they're not going to know, and they're not going to care.
Yeah.
All I just tell them is, this is a cinema film, and the cinema film needs a special handling that we can handle.
Mm-hmm.
And if somebody, I want to certain support, the other labs that are doing it, like, they're not, they're doing it by hand. So like Boutique Film Lab up in Joliet, Tennessee, and then Midwest Film Company, they're also doing it by hand processor and everything along those lines. So, but they're doing it, and there are options out there. We talk to each other, and we certainly want to be supportive, because the overall goal is that we're increasing the volume of being able to shoot color negative ECN2. So that's we're up 3 films now. We got the 500T, the 250D, and the 200T. And for only the listeners here, we'll be releasing this one. This is Euphoric 100. This is a slide film.
Ooh.
52.94, and it will be offered much cheaper than the current offering of the Kodak slide film that is out there. And but the cool thing is, what you can do with this, if you've seen season 2 of Euphoria, then you know what the cinematographer did with that film. And I'll leave it at that, because I don't want to give everything away. But we're in the process of testing this film out and getting it into the hands of cinematographers to create a very cool look with this film. So we're certainly trying to branch out, and you don't have to run this through ECN2. You can, it even says here, whoops, here you go. There it is. It says E6 on it. So,
cool.
You don't have to bring it back to us. You take it to any lab that will do E6 processing, or if you really want to feel adventurous, send it to, to us, back to us, and, process it via ECN2, and you'll get something that will look very special. So,
well, if you ever need a guinea pig,
I have not announced that yet.
If you ever need a guinea pig, feel free to send stuff up to Canada.
All right,
dude. It's
DM me. I'll send you one.
Awesome, dude. You're a very fascinating guy. I really appreciate you spending some time with me today. Like, I feel like we could talk for hours. And I would love that. I don't think people would watch that long. I think, well, maybe they would. I don't know. It's interesting how this all works, because like originally when I started doing this, like Instagram would cap you at an hour, so just have like shorter conversation. But when they like took the cap off, I've had some really long conversations on here, which have been fascinating. It's always cool to like hear people's opinions, and it's so cool what you're doing to like help people with this the problem we're having of getting color film. Like, I didn't realize how serious of a problem it was, because I've been shooting through like a stash that I've had for a while, and I was like, oh, I'm getting low on film. I should go buy some. And then I'm like, there's no fucking color film anywhere. Like, what the shit?
Right.
So it's cool that you've kind of found a solution around it. It sounds really interesting too.
It's a small one, and it certainly, again, this was initially intended for Atlanta, and then the second people were like, you got to put this on the internet. Like, I'm dying for color film here as well, and so I'm like, okay, we'll do this, but you got to understand, it's got to go through EC2. Please, for the love of God, don't send this to the dark room. Like, the last thing I want is the dark room or the indie film lab or even Fine Lab to be upset with me because now they're seeing this huge influx of EC2. But at the same time, my hope is that they do see, hey, we're seeing a lot of EC2 starting to hit us. Maybe we should start considering adding this because there are, it's not true EC2, but QWD Lab has a 5-liter kit out there, and it's a good kit, and probably the closest you can get before getting to an EC2 processor, and they're making it, and so there's definitely options out there, and I wouldn't, I would, sure, please support Atlanta Film Co., but I mean, we're, there are people out there that are trying to do it as well, so if you want to get it to, if you're out West Coast and you want to get it to Midwest film company, then please, do so in that regards, so, we're just, I certainly want to be supportive of the other folks that are in the industry as well. This isn't about me. This is making, there's film out there, and there are people have been spooling forever. And so we're just trying to educate and show that, hey, if you really want to, you can make money off of film. And you don't have to be dependent on it. You're not going to lose money off of film. Like, get a 400-foot can, learn how to do it yourself, and not only save money, but throw up an Etsy store and offset the cost. And then now you can enjoy film without having to spend tons of money on it, So
absolutely,
there are options out there.
Dude, man, it's really nice to hear someone who's so passionate about the community, and it's like, your defense of Fuji was wonderful. I really appreciated that, honestly, because it's not, we all shit on them a lot, and like,
I do
don't get me wrong, like, I'm very grateful for it. Like, I love my Fuji cameras a lot. I mean, it took a lot of crow to get there. But it's, I believe Daddy loves me now, kind of a little bit. Maybe, it's been really great chatting with you, man. And, I hope we can cross paths in the real world at some time. I think that would be a lot of fun to do something. And
you get me really thinking hard about Policon, so I'll definitely let you know. I'll see if the stars align for that, and I'll certainly reach out to you.
If you could make it out, so it's the last weekend of September. So it's like the very last weekend of September going into October. So I think it starts like September 30th or like whatever, and then it's like October 1st and 2nd. The Friday starts in Dallas for the opening of the Texas State Fair. We do like a walk around the fairgrounds and photos and shit like that. And then the rest of it's in Denton, Texas, which is like half hour, 45 minutes from Dallas. But lots of cool shit happens in Denton, and it's such a great event. I've missed it the last 2 years because of, you know what happened. So I'm excited to be going down and like, seeing my Pola pals and giving them hugs in real life. So if you can make it out, definitely come out. It'd be really cool. I think you'd enjoy it a lot.
Yeah, I do have a friend that lives down in Dallas, so I'm totally on board with saving a few bucks and sleeping uncomfortably on a sofa, just to get it out there. So I think we can make that happen.
For sure. If you need a ride, I'm driving down, so I'm gonna have my truck so I can pick you up, and like, we can make shit happen.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with me, Bill. I've had a lot of fun. I hope you had fun with it. I'm gonna have Mr. Mocha walk us out here. Next week, I'm going to have Ian from Tintype Trike on. He's in Vancouver, so it's going to be an in-studio live. It'll be the first time trying multiple cameras on the YouTube stream, so we'll see how that goes. But his work is really cool, so looking forward to that one. And stay safe out there. Try not to be a dick to each other, I guess, you know, and just know that you're loved. Yeah. Thank you so much, Bill. I hope you have a great evening.
Thanks, man. Had a blast. An honor to be on the show.
Absolutely. We'll definitely talk soon. All right. Cheers, man.
Definitely.
Bye.
Take care.
Make it stop. This one.